Hey Eloy, what was the reason behind porting your flagship app to React Native? What are the things got improved and what got worse?
The reason we decided to move on was, first of all, that we just had a code base that we felt was getting hard to work on. So we wanted to take that time to see what is the best future. And considerations for us were that we wanted to be able to improve developer experience. So open source tooling and frameworks would be great because then we can actually work on them. We wanted to de-silo people, meaning that we wanted to be able to have a team that knew React. We had some experts per platform, and then they could move around and work on features across them. And we wanted to be able to more easily expand onto other platforms, which is something that a fully Objective-C code base wasn't allowing us to do. And with React Native we could. And then you asked what are downsides and what are upsides?
Yeah, exactly. Which things got improved and which got worse?
Right. So I think all the things that we wanted to, they improved. So all the things I just mentioned, because we researched whether or not they would work out that way before we started. So that improved. The things that improved, the things that were worse is, let's see, because of our setup, because we have an existing application and then we're starting to add React Native to it, we just have a lot of overhead in managing that. So we have a different repository, we have some packaging, we have more release work to do. Upgrading, often React Native, it's a lot of work. Also because we don't do it weekly. We work on other products, and then once we do it, a month later, a lot of things tend to change. So I would say there's some rough edges, but they are also often a lot due to our specific setup.
Okay. React Native is still at version 0.x. Do you feel like it's mature enough to use it in production?
So two things. First of all, we used it in production for over a year and a half. It's being used by millions and millions of people. Apple loves the Artsy app, so I don't necessarily see a problem there. I also don't think that a version number really says much about maturity. It's more of an emotional thing. 0.48 is what we're at. It's almost 3 years old now, React Native. It's being used by plenty of big companies. So I would say that if you're using it in the way that we and all those other big companies are using it, is production ready. But if you're going to newly adopt it, I would definitely urge you to realize that if you have to have a certain attitude where you're not afraid of diving in and fixing limitations and those kind of things. Or you would just want to settle with the limitations and work around them, change your design, etc., then you can probably cope as well. If you do those things, if you have that attitude, then I think it's production ready.
Hey Ken, you're the author of many open source libraries. Which one you are most proud of?
Wow, the one I'm most proud of. It's hard to say. I mean, I guess so. Slick Carousel, I'm pretty proud of. Because not just it was very popular. It got a lot of stars and it's in use. If you go look, I guess you go libscore.com, you can see where it's actually used, and it's crazy. You're like, what? Yeah, you're like, what? So I mean, there's libraries that I enjoy personally more. I like Spectacle because I personally use it all the time. I don't use carousel libraries now. I had a need for that then, but now, I mean, I use stuff like Spectacle probably more often.
So what are the plans for your next library? Will it be something for React Native?
My next library? Whew. I don't know. I kind of do these things on a whim. I'll get if I'll come across a problem and then, solve it. So, I don't have a particular problem. I mean, there's a lot of problems, but, I don't have a solution that's brewing for anything. I mean, I have things, but, nothing really planned. Probably the next thing that I build, or at least that I want to build, is a React Native app. So, I was thinking about building a really funny workout app. So, imagine the worst fitness advice you've ever heard from a man who's not particularly fit, but it's very America. So yeah, that should be good.
Hey Martin, how do you see the future of React Native platform?
Hey, yeah, good question. Thanks for the question. So, as you can see, like we are here at React Native Europe. There's like the community just keeps growing, which is exciting. I was just sending some pictures here from the conference back to my old colleagues at Facebook. So I'm not at Facebook anymore. I took some time off during the summer. So the future of React Native, I think, like it's gonna keep growing. Like more people using it to build their apps. At Facebook, I often saw it used by teams who had web development experience, and that's what also happens outside of Facebook. So, yeah, it's maintained by Facebook. I see just more and more people using it basically and building their apps with React Native. I think it's great how Mike does the maintenance, like managing the releases. Writing release notes. I think it's awesome what Callstack is doing, what Expo are doing for React Native, and loads of people in the community, including many of the speakers here.
What do you think is the biggest advantage of using React Native compared to the other solutions?
Right. So basically, what I like about React Native is that you can you can share the code. It's like all these reasons that you often hear people mentioning. So it's like you, as I showed in my talk, you share some code between both platforms. You don't have to wait for compilation, and now it depends like what are you comparing React Native to. If you're comparing to like doing native iOS and Android development, okay, you have to learn different sets of frameworks. Android now has instant run, so like the iteration speed. I actually recently did like a small Android app, so the iteration speed wasn't bad on Android either. But yeah, like React Native still has like its own set of advantages.
Have you tried those frameworks?
Right. So that was the other thing I wanted to talk about. So like there are a lot of like other ideas like NativeScript. There's Xamarin. Google has their own, which I forgot the name. Do you remember? No. Google has their own framework, and I just forgot the name right now. But well, I actually, to be honest, I looked at each of them, but I haven't built an app with any of them except React Native. So it's hard for me to compare. But I think like I know the one is like by Google is used inside Google. And all the other have their users as well. So I know Xamarin has tons of users. So pretty sure they work. They're like different programming models, right? Like yeah, React Native uses React, which is like one of the big things about it. Yeah, I mean I think they each have like their own thing, and like all of them make sense. Yeah.
Hey Tal. How would you rate React Native performance compared to the native solutions?
This is a difficult question because it really depends on the use case. But if I had to say overall in a standard app, I would rate it around 90% to 95%. And every year that React Native matures further, we bring this number up. And I think we'll eventually get to around 98 with the libraries that we're working on. So I'm very excited about that because the productivity gains of React Native are the main promise. And I think that performance overheads can be overcome with enough work.
Wix is doing a huge work in the React Native community, especially when it comes to porting some native modules into React Native world, like you did with React Native Navigation or React Native Interactables. Are you planning to release some more libraries in near future?
I think we're going to focus on the near future on tooling a little bit more. We're kind of going to grow the Detox ecosystem and make Detox maybe a tool that you can build tools on top of, and maybe add some testing to other areas. One area I'm very interested in, for example, is Storybook and snapshot testing on React Native with bitmaps on Storybook. I think that would be like the direction to do component tests. I believe in that a lot. Also, also, I want to see more tooling for performance. Right now, we're in the midst of performance investigations in our own app because it's kind of a difficult problem of death by 1,000 cuts, and it's very hard to know what is causing the issues. I think we kind of solved many of the core issues with the libraries that we were making, but now it's more of, having better developer practices, and developers can only do that if the tooling is good enough. So we're working on some pretty cool things. There is one repo called Detox Instruments. I recommend you check it out. It's going to be separate from Detox, but it's going to be like dev tools on steroids, and it's going to let you kind of investigate what's going on in your app. So I'm excited about that a lot.
Hi Naoufal. React seems to be a universal paradigm. What do you think about creating code base which share the things over the platforms, an example mobile and web?
Yeah, so I think I've always been chasing this dream of write once, run everywhere. I know that React Native, when it was released, it was all about learning once and then writing across these different platforms. I think there's a lot to win from using things like React Primitive or React Native web, where we can define our components and use them across different platforms. As you can see, like in a lot of products that we have these days, the interface seem to pretty much be the same. So there's no need to rewrite these components over and over again. And I'd like to see the React ecosystem head in that type of direction with one set of primitives that we can reuse in our applications. It's good.
Do you like the current shape of React Native?
The current shape of React Native, I think it's quite large, although I do think it was necessary. I don't think we would have the adoption that we have today if it wasn't for all of these native APIs shipping with React Native. Although I do think that as it becomes more popular, a lot more people are coming on board, and it does add a maintenance burden. Also, maybe adds a little bit of a library weight burden. So I'd like to see some of these APIs that are maybe not used as frequently be kind of pulled into separate third-party modules. I think it'll make React Native as a whole easier to maintain, and it'll help us iterate a lot faster.
I'm so excited that this conference takes place here in Wrocław this year. It's been about community from the very beginning. Back in the day, 1 year ago, when I was inviting speakers, I reached out to all of my friends that were doing stuff in React Native community to come here, present stuff, and basically enjoy the time here in Poland. And they came in. And so I think that's what makes this special atmosphere here, that everyone feels like being part of a family. People yesterday were telling me at the party that they felt a special kind of atmosphere in the air. They felt very welcome and kind of chilled. So I think that this conference is something that kind of summarizes what our community is all about. It's all about friendships, and working all together. So if you kind of feel the same vibe, I kind of encourage you to check out our website and come to this conference once again next year. Thank you.